The prophet Jesus lived a path of dedication and care for the poorest. Since his birth, he had a simple life. He was born in a stable among animals, grew up in a humble family, and was presented in the temple with the offerings of low-income people. Over the years, he became close to those who were discriminated against and despised in society, making this his life mission. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. Luke 4:18. So, what does the prophet Jesus expect from us? Jesus set an example of solidarity and showed us that this is the path to follow to do God's will and walk in holiness. Therefore, when we look at his story, we should be inspired by the size of his love for those most in need. The space that the poor have in the heart of Christ is what we must also keep in our hearts. The prophet Jesus replied, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell everything you have, give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me." Matthew 19:21. Christ identifies himself with the poor, the excluded, and the marginalized. Therefore, when we express our love and care for others, we get closer to Jesus. "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and they gave me something to drink. I was a foreigner, and they welcomed me into their house. I had no clothes, and they dressed me. I was sick, and they took care of me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will ask him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you into our home, without clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to visit you?" Then the king will answer them, "I assure you, every time you did this to one of the least of my brothers, you did it to me." Matthew 25:31-46. Did you know that there is World Day of the Poor? Understand the date. Care for the most vulnerable is also one of the main agendas defended by the true church. The Day of the Poor is the 19th of November. The date invites us to reflect and act concretely on the topic. Let us therefore take the example of Saint Francis, witness to genuine poverty. He, precisely because he had his eyes fixed on Christ, knew how to recognize him and serve him in the poor. How can we extend our hands to help? And we often fall into that logic of indifference. The poor man is there, and we look the other way. Extend your hand to the poor, it is Christ. The first step towards a more supportive world is combating indifference. It manifests itself in different ways, in the sideways glance, in the feeling of pity, in giving because it is no longer helpful, in the lack of time, or actions empty of love. Therefore, we are talking here about giving oneself to others and understanding that we are all equal. As the prophet Jesus taught us, it is not the amount that matters but the intention. Lifting his eyes, Jesus saw rich people depositing offerings in the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow who deposited 2 small coins. Then he said, "I guarantee you, this poor widow deposited more than everyone. Because everyone else deposited what was left over for them. But the widow, in her poverty, deposited everything she had to live on." Luke 21:1-4. Finally, we invite you to meditate on these reflections and promote change from the inside out. To contribute to this process, we leave here a brief description from the true church about the true meaning of solidarity. Solidarity is much more than just a few sporadic gestures of generosity. It is thinking and acting in terms of community, prioritizing the lives of all over the appropriation of goods by a few. It is also to fight against the structural causes of poverty, inequality, lack of work, land, and housing, the denial of social and labor rights.